Welcome back to Final Fantasy XIV. Yeah, here in the Crystarium, in, the first, where the Crystal XIV just summoned us here. Now, a full and frank discussion in the privacy of my study would seem to be in order. But I think our conversation would be more meaningful were you first to gain a firmer grasp on the situation here. To that end, I would like you to visit a few of the Crystarium's civic leaders and glean something of this world and its predicament. As you can see, the path will take you directly to the Aetheryte, a convenience with which I'm sure you're all too familiar. Being the rightful object of my summoning spell, you should in theory be able to reach all the way back along your etheric trail and find a connection with the source, believe it or not. I strongly suggest you complete this attunement before venturing any further. After you have done so, walk up the steps next to the Aetheryte and head out to the left to arrive in the crystalline mean. This is where you'll find our collective of crafters and gatherers, as well as their spokeswoman, Catalyst, one of the people I should like you to meet. Another is a Moran. To reach him and his cabinet of curiosity, you want to avoid the aforementioned steps and take the exit on the left and simply continue straight along and down until you come to the large doors at the end of the path. The third and final person I would like you to meet is Bragi, our man in charge of trade and distribution. He's to be found in the markets, which you can access from the opposite side of the Aetheryte Plaza. In seeking out each of my colleagues, you will visit the major districts of the city and hopefully gain a feel for the place. I trust my directions were simple enough. I think they were clear. Very good. I concede the layout of the Crystarium owes more to historic necessity than planning, but I'm sure you'll learn its twists and turns before long. In all honesty, the true challenge may be in finding the right way to approach its citizens. As you discovered during your encounter with the Captain, the people of this world are unaware of the existence of other stars and will struggle to accept the truth of your origin. That being the case, when you may ask whence you hail, as they inevitably will, I suggest you claim to share a homeland with the Crystal Exarch. There's an unspoken rule here about peering too deeply into that particular mystery. When you've finished making the rounds, pray meet me in the large courtyard at the center of town. Until then. Okay, attune to the Aetheryte first. By focusing your senses, you detect the flow of vastly distant currents of aether. Your connection to these energies is faint but stable, and should allow teleportation to Aetherites in the source. So let's take the left path. It is to north, and straight ahead was what I said, right? Through these big doors. This is up above. Yes, might I help you find something? With all the tomes stored on our shelves, I understand that searching for any one in particular can be a daunting task. Please let me know if I can be of service. So, are you up the person I'm looking for? Tilt. And he is Moran. Excuse me, miss, are you recently come to the city, perchance? I'm quite familiar with our civic roles, you see, and well, What I mean to ask is, have you brought any books with you? A rampant scroll even? A scrap of scribbled on parchment? My apologies. Literature is something of an obsession of mine, as well as a profession. Librarian Moran, at your service, and this humble collection is known as the Cabinet of Curiosity. As your powers of perception have likely informed you, my colleagues and I are responsible for curating all manner of tomes, documents, and other vehicles for the written word. As horrifying as the loss of life and land wrought by the flood unquestionably was, the damage to recorded knowledge was no less catastrophic. We few do all we can to preserve what wisdom survived. But tell me, what brings you to the cabinet today? Looking for any title in particular? Mayhap a spot of academics research? Oh, so you have an interest in modern history. Splendid. A thorough review of recent events can often yield novel perspectives. I quite agree. If you would prefer something visual to accompany the account, then I think I would have an illustrated history book for children somewhere. Just a moment and I fetch it for you. And here we are. Would you like to pull up a chair? Make yourself more comfortable? On with the lesson then. A 100 years ago, or near enough not to matter, villains known as the Warriors of Light slew the Shadow Keeper, the Steward of Darkness. In the wake of his tainted deed, light began to pour into the world as if from unseen cracks. It pooled and swelled without cease until the day an enormous blinding wave rose up and swept across our star. We called this calamity the Flood of Light. Everything it touched was leached of life and vigor, leaving naught behind but a luminous wasteland. Yet, just when it seemed that all would be lost, a savior appeared before us. The Oracle of Light. She stood betwixt us and approaching doom, and by her power did she stay the flood. Thus was Northrend, and Northrend alone, spared the fate of erasure. Yeah. Remember back in the Heavensward patch content? When Nymphilia went with the Warriors of Light to the first, with the Warriors of Darkness to the first, to stop the Flood of Light? Tragedy would, however, arrive in another form. From the blasted emptiness descended horrors of strange and terrific aspect to bedevil the few folk who survived. These sin-eaters were light incarnate, and their fulgent presence stole the night from Northrend's sky. Even now they circle the remaining bastions of civilization, ever on the hunt for us, ever hungering for our flesh. And thus did the world become what it is. Should you ever wish to hear the tale again, I would be glad to retell it for you. Or if you would rather I speak of other matters, that too would be my pleasure. I should be glad of a company. The exchange with Morris taught you about the flood of light. Now, reset up the stairs. To the left, was it right? From up close, the Crystal Tower looks absolutely great. And we could never see it up close unless maybe in a cutscene? It was still trying to find my way around here. Where's Cutlass? Calling note? No. Rare to see a place so well stocked with goods, isn't it? But not here. I'm going to guess you're new to our fair city. Well, for what it's worth, you've chosen a fine sanctuary. The XIV can throw up a barrier if the Sin Eaters come knocking, so it's a damn sight safer here than it's out there. Safer and more civilized too, thanks to us in the mean. We work together to procure materials and resources and craft the goods which make city life possible. This is a place to visit if you need a coat mended or a kettle forged. Just don't go thinking it'll all be handed to you on a plate, like was Yulmoran layabouts. In the Crystarium, we work for a living. Though I see you're no stranger to honest labor, you don't have a whiff of indolence about you, like some folk I met. So, I can't quite pin down your profession. Where's it you're from? From the home of a crystal XIV. One of the XIV's countrymen, you say? I see. Well then, I work twice as hard to make you feel welcome. Our city wouldn't even exist if it ran for him, and any friend of his is a friend of ours. It's really quite incredible when you think about it. They say his grand magic summoned the Crystal Tower into existence, pulled the entire thing out of thin air. It wasn't long before droves of refugees began congregating around its base, desperate for shelter after losing their homes to the flood. And that's how the Crystarium began. At the XIV's invitation, buildings started growing up, and with the help of some curious relics brought forth from the tower, the place gradually expanded into the thriving metropolis you see today. The city stood here for decades now, yet the eldest among us swear the XIV looked exactly the same as he did back then. He is indeed a man of many mysteries, but for all his secrecy, he has never let us down. And if he and you wish to remain silent about your shared homeland, then the folk here will respect your wish for privacy. I am, however, more than a little curious to see any crafting talent you might be hiding. If you'd ought to contribute on that front, be sure to come back and visit once more, so you had a chance to settle in. Just ask for Catalyst and I'll find you a niche here in the crystalline mean. You can help us keep the cogs of the city greased and turning. The exchange with Catalyst has taught you about life in the Crystarium. This will probably later unlock a quest, something? A means to craft. The Moogle. Nope. Visible wall. New to this elephant? The spinning head and wide eyes give you away. Welcome, my name is Bragi, and I'm the master of these markets. They gave the district another official title, but I'm not in the habit of using it. Too flawed by half. In any case, your merchants stock a range of equipment for Dran, such as yourself, so finding something in your size shouldn't be a problem. Dran? Alright, something wrong. Let's see if we can straighten this out. See those two in front of us? The shorter one is a human. The taller one is an elf. But sturdy individual over there is a Galgent. Well, the one with the horns is a Dran, like you. And then you have a large scaly chaps with long tails and a neck for raising livestock. Those would be the Zun. Which apparently is not the name you know them by. Now I'm curious to know which far-flung region you hail from. Ah, the same as the XIV, huh? Well, that explains it. You don't get much further flung than that. We've had a few of your lot pass through in recent years, and despite their obvious learning, they floundered over the simplest things. But not to worry. Should you find yourself confused by the local language or customs, I'll be here to answer your questions. Your exchange with Bragi has taught you about the peoples of the forest. Hey, Skywatcher, have you something to tell? Everlasting light, forever. Doesn't matter where you are. So, given that there is a Skywatcher here for the weather, that will probably change. Well, how did you fare? Did my colleagues help you form a clearer picture of this world and its peoples? Yes, it seems you were treated to a most thorough introduction. I understand if it was something of a chore, but it was necessary that you grasp these things before we proceed. As for the Crystal Tower's origin, you may have noted that details were sparse. The structure is in fact the self-same one you know from the source, transported to the first in its entirety. It was my first attempt at breaching the boundaries between worlds, something of a trial run for your eventual crossing, and although I do not know which era I tore it from, I do know that its arrival served to set the wheels of fate in motion. You've done as requested, and learned something of the world in which you find yourself. Now it's time I fulfilled my half of the bargain, and explained what has befallen your comrades. That is a conversation I would rather have in the privacy of my quarters, however. I must go on to the tower and organize a few things, but I shall see that the guard knows to admit you. Just like that, when Gratia is... I'm not familiar with that name. Is there something I should know? An extraordinary tale, but I'm afraid I found no such individual residing in the tower when it passed into my care. Maybe we can revisit that mystery another time. For now I think it's best that we focus on the present. Yeah, Graha sealed himself in the tower. Back then when we did the Crystal Tower raid. Greetings, madam. The exarch awaits you within.
Welcome to the Ocular, my private study. We can speak here without fear of being overheard. I have much to explain, but the truths which I must touch upon in doing so would cause only distress and confusion to the people of this world. Pray keep that in mind. Now, I am sure you are desperate to know the fate of your fellow Scions. To put it simply, they are here in the First. Their arrival, however, was not as recent as you may imagine. Here, time flows at a different pace from that of the Source. In the space of a single hour in your home world, an entire year might pass in the First, and the reverse could also be true. The pace fluctuates without rhyme or reason, and it cannot be predicted. That said, we seem to be entering a period of near equivalence, and thus, for the moment, you need not overly concern yourself with the passage of time. As for your companions, however, Yustola and Urianger have dwelled here for 3 winters, all told, while Thancred's count stands at 5.
3 and 5 years, yeah?
Even our more recent arrivals, Alphino and Alize, have lived in the First for almost a year. My intention had been to summon only you, but the art of reaching across worlds has proven exceedingly difficult to master. Thus it was that my fumbling hand closed upon those to whom your fate is most closely bound as well. As they were not the object of my summons, their transference was incomplete. Though they may appear to possess corporeal bodies, they are, in truth, merely spirits that one can see and touch. Consequently, while you yourself will be able to pass between worlds with relative freedom, they will not. Much as it grieves me, they are stranded here, unable to return.
What have I been doing all this time?
We spent every waking hour searching for a way to reverse the summoning. In the beginning, at least. As you may have surmised, however, our efforts met with little success. And then we all but abandoned the endeavor once Urianger shared with us the vision he had witnessed during his journey through the rift. In that chaotic no-man's land between realms, time and space warp and blend in unexpected ways. What Urianger saw was the future. That which would one day come to pass. In his vision of tomorrow, the first was rejoined with the source. This collision of worlds brought about the 8th umbral calamity and the deaths of countless multitudes. Amongst those who perished, Urianger clearly saw the fall of the Scion's mightiest champion. He watched you die. And thus did the Scions embrace their exile, and began searching this world for a means to forestall the coming catastrophe in yours. Their souls are stranded in the first, yes, but they have fought on, desperate to save their home and you from destruction. Nor have their efforts been in vain, for it was they who finally established that the elimination of the Sin Eaters will indeed serve to prevent the calamity. Considering these circumstances of our meeting, you would be forgiven for doubting my version of events. And so, before all else, I would suggest you track down your comrades and hear the tale from their lips. I shall of course be happy to assist in these reunions, and you need not make any decisions regarding your involvement until you are certain of where you stand. Meanwhile, I promise I will not rest until I have found a way to help your friends return home. What say you? Have I earned your trust for the moment, at least?
All right. For the moment.
Excellent. You will not regret this. With that settled, we shall have to see about getting you ready for the road. Traveling across the rift has no doubt left you weary. I will arrange for a room where you might rest in comfort. While it's being prepared, perhaps I can show you around.
Okay, but I think we go to bed next time, and yeah, see what awaits us elsewise within the Crystarium and Northrend. Until next time then, I am Ace, and don't get lost.